Hi, carpenters. I answer questions for Home Depot under the name Milcon. And I've got a lot of questions about this saw, which Home Depot discontinued a month or two ago. But there's rumors it's going to come back. And this saw, while it's not a rough carpentry saw, it's not a saw that if you carry a framing axe on your hip and think that you live and die with a skill saw, this saw is not for you, because it's not for cutting big heavy wood, and I'll tell you why as we go along here. But this saw is a great finish carpenter saw, and that's what I'm going to review this as a finish carpenter saw. First thing we're going to look at is how much it will cross cut. Well, it will cross cut a full 12 inches. So any 12-inch dimensional lumber, you're going to be able to cross cut. How deep will this saw cut? Well, once again, let's look and see. There we go. It will cut 4 inches to the arbor. Once again, it'll take even rough 4-inch lumber, which is great. Sometimes you end up doing that. You're working in a restaurant and they want rough lumber, and you're going to end up getting it full dimension. This saw will cut it all. So that is where it's great in what it'll cut dimensionally. But here's the reason it's not great for the rough carpenter that's cutting beams and stuff. This saw has a soft start. And if you don't wait until it's fully spun up and you've got a guy working for you or whatever, and he plunges into the wood, it'll kick back. And that's dangerous. But if you're a finish carpenter, the soft start is great because you don't get that torque from the saw. You don't get that jump like a DeWalt. Their big DeWalt saws will just always jump, man. You pull the trigger and the thing about pulls out of your hand. Well, for me, a carpenter, for my finish carpentry work, that's terrible because then it's jumping right before I want to make a cut. And I always get bad cuts, and I just go, why? Well, that's part of the reason. But then there's more reasons that this saw is great. It has a center handle. This handle centers over the blade, and that's really important because when you go to push through your cut, you're pushing right down the center of the blade. Unlike a lot of saws that the handle is off over here to the side, the left or right, then you're pushing across your cut. And when you push across that cut, it wants to torque the saw just a little bit. Maybe only 2, 3, 4, 5 thousandths, 10 thousandths, but you'll see that in your cut. And that's where guys complain about their cuts don't fit good, particularly even cross cuts or anything else. Like, this thing just doesn't fit. It's like it wants to chew a little out at the front, and we just don't get a good cut. And lots of times they'll say, well, that's a problem with the arbor or something like that. And in fact, it may well be, but this saw has a really tight arbor, and so it's not an issue with this saw. You push straight through. The other thing is the weight of the saw. And this is the weight that you're actually pushing back and forth I'm talking about here. This is a belt drive. There's no question a belt drive is going to give you better than a gear drive saw and cut. You don't end up with the backlash. You don't end up with the vibration. All really important when you're trying to cut. This saw has a center motor with a belt drive. So consequently, the motor's up and out of the way, which is going to give you almost full 45 and even a little bit more than that on each side on bevel cuts, along with 45 to 60 degrees left and right on your cross cut. So this thing is a great saw for finish grade trim, cabinet type trim, because of that. Now let me show you the soft start function. Just listen real quickly how this works. You'll hear the saw spin up slowly, but the great thing is you have total control of the saw. It doesn't do that little jump thing. So here we go. So you get full power. You still got a 15 amp motor, and 15 amp motors are all going to put out the same power. That's physics, You got, 746 watts per horsepower. So, you convert that and you got, it's almost 2 horsepower the saw is going to put out, but it's always the amp rating is going to tell you the power it puts out. The guys that go, that saw's not that powerful. If it's drawing the amps it's supposed to be drawing, the two saws will put out the same amount. The only difference will be is the drivetrain. And how much power does a drivetrain eat up? Once again, a bevel gear drivetrain is going to eat more power than a belt drive. Belt drives are really efficient when it comes to transmitting power. But in any event, so to recap, it's got a great guard. You can see through it if you want, if that's how you cut. It's got a powerful motor, but you got to wait for it to wind up. It's belt drive. Its center of weight's good. Its center of pushing through Your material's really good. It has really nice, smooth guides, as you can hear them here. I mean, this thing just guides, it just guides beautifully. It has another option that is a nice, that comes with it, is a work light. So you push this button here, you got a work light. Now you can see that mark you put on the wood even dark. That I just love because I'm an old guy and I can't see that well. Don't hear good either, my wife says. But at any rate, that aside, that is just a great function to have. Then of course it's got lasers on both sides of the blade. The lasers don't come in exactly. I don't use lasers. Most finished carpenters don't, but it's got them if you want them. So it's got that. Now it has a couple drawbacks I'll tell you too. One of them is it's got a dust collection system that is almost non-existent without a vacuum. This thing without a vacuum will throw crap everywhere. But once again, finished carpenters almost always have a vacuum because they're working in an environment they've got to keep clean. They've got a vacuum. With a vacuum works great. You can see I've added a little bit to the pickup chute here. This is black duct tape. Works great. Pushes through your material. Gives that little extra you need. Solves part of the problem, but you still got to have a vacuum. The next thing I like about this saw is its weight. It's fairly light for its size. But then the next thing I really like is the front controls. There, it just saves you so much time and effort. You're not having to lean over and turn knobs back here. You're going to be able to run your bevel like this, either side. It's got manual stops and 90 degree or 45 degree stops. It's got, let me see, what, 33.9 stop that way on both sides. You can move the stops over and into your travel. So that's just a great function to have. The other thing is, of course, obviously, like almost all saws, you've got all the stops on the table. And once again, those controls are all up front. You lock it down here. I mean, it's just, you really can't beat the saw when it comes for a finished saw. It's got, there's a couple of the other functions that it has. Here's the slide lock. On this side, even though I don't have the camera over here, it obviously locks down. It has a depth gauge adjustment on this side, on this other side, so you can, if you want to do dados, you can do dados with it. So it's just a great saw. It's not super, super heavy duty, but it's just that kind of saw that you just, after you use it a little bit, you go, that is a really, really nice saw. And it came from the factory, 100% zero. The blade to the fence was zero. The blade to the table was zero. I didn't have to do any adjustments at all, which was really appreciated. So anyway, that's about the saw. I'm going to post this as the most recent questions that I got from Home Depot about the saw. Hopefully that answers some of your questions about the saw. Like I say, it's a great saw. Hopefully Home Depot brings it back. The price of this at the end when they were clearancing them got down to $299. I mean, that was just literally a steal, an absolute steal from this saw, because this saw should probably be closer, you know, I would be expecting to pay in the $500 to $600 range for this saw, because it's just that good a saw. By the way, its model number is an MS255SR. So look for it back at Home Depot. Hopefully they'll come back with this saw or an equivalent saw for it. You really can't beat it. Like all saws, it's got its plus and minuses, but for the price and for the features and for a finished carpenter, this is a saw that you'll have for the rest of your life. You'll be glad you bought it.